Welcome back. A new Marquette law poll this week with some surprising headlines for Republican presidential hopefuls in Wisconsin. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis coming out ahead of Donald Trump by double digits in a head-to-head face-off, evenly tied with Trump when considering other GOP candidates. I'm joined by poll director Charles Franklin. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
I want to start with that first headline. It can't be that surprising in Wisconsin, given Trump already lost the state once. But what was your kickback reaction when you saw those numbers?
I'm surprised, but when you dig into the numbers, they kind of make sense. Trump nationally is leading DeSantis by about 50 to about 25 or so. So we have Trump at 31, DeSantis at 30, really close. But we have 18% picking one of the other Republican candidates and 21% picking, saying undecided. But then when we push them and say, if it came down to a choice of just Trump or DeSantis, DeSantis picks up 75% from those who picked other candidates, picks up 65% from the undecideds, and that's why he takes a substantial lead over Trump when you make it that head-to-head contest. I think it shows that Donald Trump has a very strong grip on a significant fraction of the party.
Which he always will have.
Which he always will have, and we're not expecting that to go away. But it does suggest that even within the people who think of themselves as Republicans, there's some openness to other candidates. Now, exactly who, they're very undecided about. But I think it does say that maybe Wisconsin within the party is a closer place than some of the other states or the national polling.
So you referenced the national polling and mentioned, like, this is a little bit different than what we're seeing from the national polling. Is that because national polls haven't asked voters the question, pick one or the other?
Yeah. No, you get that when you push pick one or the other. In our national polls, we had a similar result. Trump ahead with everybody. And until the spring, DeSantis moved ahead in a head-to-head. But in our May poll, that reversed with Trump a bit ahead of DeSantis, though not as big as other polls have shown. So I do think we've seen a tightening of the race with DeSantis, who had more of an advantage nationally, coming closer. But you also have to say that Trump's support has risen since January. He kind of went in a low slump leading up to the fall elections, and immediately after, he's come back some. But here in Wisconsin, we're seeing this close division within the party, but a whole lot, 39%, saying undecided or some other candidate.
Absolutely. Interesting that support has kind of creeped up as Trump has been federally indicted, which obviously has a huge influence on the race.
It does, and I think we see that in our data, that the support for Trump among Republicans is 94% when he's running against Biden. And so he's got strong GOP support. 68% of Republicans are favorable to Trump, but 30% say they're unfavorable to him. And in that 68%, he gets 45% support. But strikingly, among Republicans with an unfavorable view of him, he gets 0 votes in this last poll.
Surprising.
And so then they go to DeSantis, or they go to other candidates, or they say they're undecided. So here's the point, that if you've got a grip on nearly 70% of your party, you're odds-on favorite to win a nomination. But if 30% of your party doesn't like you and is this unfavorable, this anxious for an alternative, it does leave some opportunity, whether it's DeSantis or others, to rise. And who knows whether our primary in April will still be competitive. The race may be decided before then, but perhaps Wisconsin ends up being yet another battleground, as it actually was for Trump in 2016 when he lost the state to Ted Cruz.
Absolutely. I think it's a forgotten point. I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to talk about Democrats a little bit. We've spent a lot of time in the presidential candidates, but surprising boost for Governor Evers' favorability now that he's kind of passed the hurdle of his next reelection. Talk a little bit about those numbers. Has he ever been this high in favorability?
Yeah, he bumped up to 57% job approval this time. He was at 46 just before the election. This puts him back in the area where he was in 2020 and early 2021, where he did get a boost from the early COVID decisions that he made. I think there are two things going on. One is in the heat of an election campaign in October, you tend to have your numbers pushed down.
The attack ads have some effect.
It does, and you won the election. So that's a good signal. What we see is Republicans gave him like a 4% approval rating in October, but they're up to 18 or 19 now. Still not a whole lot of approval, but to get 18 or 19% from Republicans is showing there was some shift there. Independents are quite positive to him at this point as well. I think the legislative session always contains a tough battle between the legislature and Republicans and the governor. Nobody gets what they want. But in the end, at least when it comes to shared revenue and schools, our data show that the public is pretty much in line with what those two deals were, to the extent that both the legislature and the governor can take some credit for doing something that the public likes. That helps their approval rating. We unfortunately didn't ask about the approval of the legislature, but we did ask about the governor, and you see the bounce.
And Evers is far ahead of even Biden in Wisconsin, according to your poll.
Quite a bit. We didn't see much movement up for Biden, up 2 or 3 points, but that's also nationally. He's moved up 2 or 3 points in the last few months. Still underwater, still in the 40s for Biden. Historically, that would be a real challenge for an incumbent president. In these days of much more partisan division and very low ratings from the other party, it's hard to judge what this means for 2024.
As you're polling throughout 2022, and I think you made this comment last year, everyone's a little bit grumpy right now.
Very, very grumpy.
Any final thoughts?
No, I will say I think that on schools and shared revenue, we saw pretty big support for shared revenue, 70% support increasing shared revenue, and that's across partisan lines, it's across regional lines. So that's a sweet spot for policymaking. And on schools, people want more money for vouchers, but not if it takes away from public schools. And so the package that went through increased the value of the vouchers while also increasing public school funding. So in that sense, too, it's in line with public opinion.
So politics isn't entirely broken, perhaps?
Only bent.
All right. Charles, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Just ahead, Wisconsin's top election official in the hot seat with an uncertain future.